Back at it again, baby, and we got another one with Ben Shapiro. Let's dive in.
That the way to prevent the elites, an elite class from controlling other people's lives is to restrict the inherent power of government to control everybody's life. When you suggested before that the goal of the society should be stability, everyone wants a stable society, but there are lots of different, you say this in the book, there are lots of different types of stable societies.
Yes.
Right? There are monarchies that are stable societies. There are communist regimes that are
most stable
right,
societies.
exactly. There are dictatorships that are incredibly, North Korea is a very stable society.
That's right.
So is the goal of our society stability primarily or freedom, and when do the two come in conflict? Because
they often do, and that's an incisive question, and you're exactly right. And I would say to narrow the goal down to a single thing, as I did, is probably stupid. Stability makes a lot of other things that you want possible. But I would say within the American context, what you want is a country where the average person, again, with an IQ of 100 and, an income of 90 grand a year and 3 kids can sort of live the life that people lived under those circumstances in 1950. Like you want the average person to feel like he's vested in the society, that he can have a stable family without, by the way, let me just say, the economic impetus behind family destruction is totally underappreciated by conservatives. So they looked at the landscape of inner city America for 50 years and they're like, nope, family formation's gone. Like the overwhelming majority of kids grow up without a father. That's a cultural problem. Yeah, well, okay, yeah, it is a cultural problem. That's one way to describe it. But what's its root? Why did it happen? Well, look at rural America now, where you're seeing the incidence of fatherlessness like spike.
Yep.
It's unknown in my neighborhood. I live in a rich neighborhood. I'm sure you do too.
Right.
Like everyone's married, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's no divorce where I live. In rural America, divorce among white people is now the rule. Out of wedlock births in a lot of zip codes are the majority. It's not. Why did that happen? Because the men make less than the women. Nobody wants, then there's so much social science on this. Nobody wants to say it out loud because you're violating some unspoken rule of like unhappy feminism or something. I don't care. It's true. Study after longitudinal study has shown that when men make less, women don't want to marry them. Now, maybe they should.
That's very interesting that he mentions that, because I've heard several other individuals in the past mention the same thing, that when a man makes less than a woman, it's a bad recipe. So he's not the only person that I've ever heard say that. I just wanted to point that out. That's been said plenty of times before. And it's very interesting that across the board, that is the case.
Ask, I have 3 daughters. Ask them. And they're not ideological at all. And they're totally open-minded. They're young people. Would you want to marry a man who makes less than you? What? No.
do you think that's because of structural changes in the American economy, or the counter-argument, which would be the welfare state, which is when you start to see all of this begin to spike?
It's definitely the welfare state, of course, plays a huge role in this, but I'm talking employed people. So when manufacturing dies, what's left? Well, in a lot of parts of the country, huge swaths of rural America, you have 2 main employers, the schools and the hospitals. Those are the full-time year-round employers. And those are traditionally female jobs, not exclusively.
Right.
There are many exceptions to all of this. And there are plenty of women who are happy to marry a man who makes less than they do. But I'm saying across large populations, that is true, and it's been shown to be true. So when male wages decline below those of females, marriage formation declines along with it. But
To all my ladies, do you guys find that to be true? Are you married to someone who makes less? Would you marry someone that makes less? Let me know in the comment section. Let me know.
But childbirth does not.
Right.
In other words, we're sort of
Right.
hardwired to impregnate, okay? That continues. So what the net effect is, you have no families and more kids, especially boys, growing up in fatherless homes, which all but guarantees that you repeat the process. So you have the disintegration of the family because of an economic factor. There are other factors, and of course.
So are you calling for redistribution into these areas? Because it
I'm
seems
calling
like,
for whatever it takes to stop this.
right, so this is where I was asking about the Bernie Sanders crossover. Where do you see the Bernie Sanders
I
program
think
going
Bernie
too far?
Sanders is a buffoon, okay?
I know you
and
do.
actually totally insincere. But I'm saying conservatives go on and have for generations about how important the family. They don't mean it at all. I live in D.C., where the entire conservative nonprofit infrastructure lives, okay? And I know what their priorities are, and they're lowering marginal tax rates, which I'm for, by the way, as someone who pays the majority of his income in taxes. Of course I'm for that. But the goal, if the goal is preserving the family as the core building block of any successful society, and it's got to be that goal, because it has all kinds of effects that we want, and it's just inherently good. I don't need to explain it, but I could. But the point is, if that's the goal, what are you doing about it? If you wake up one morning and you find yourself in a society where 23-year-olds with 4-year college degrees and like initiative who aren't smoking weed every day, if they can't make enough to buy a car, much less a home, much less get married, much less have children, then why should you be surprised when half of them say they prefer socialism?
Well,
you should not be surprised.
I agree to a certain extent. I think that the question is when the pedal hits the metal. Like you talk in the book about technology and how it's shifting and taking away jobs from folks.
Yes.
And you make specific reference to truck driving and the fact that there are going to be these automated cars on the roads. So would you, Tucker Carlson, be in favor of restrictions on the ability of trucking companies to use...
That last comment that he made about the socialism thing, very interesting. And he is right. Shouldn't be surprised. Man, I put in this work and now I still can't afford anything. You know what? Forget it, you know? He's kind of right. But y'all let me know what y'all think. Let's get back to this trucking issue.
You make specific reference to truck driving and the fact that there are going to be these automated cars on the roads. So would you, Tucker Carlson, be in favor of restrictions on the ability of trucking companies to use this sort of technology specifically to, sort of artificially maintain the number of jobs that are available in the trucking industry?
Are you joking? In a second. In a second. In other words, if I were president, when I say to DOT, to Department of Transportation, we're not letting driverless trucks on the road, period. Why? Really simple. Driving for a living is the single most common job for high school educated men in this country, in all 50 states. By the way, that's the same group whose wages have gone down by 11% over the past 30 years. The social cost of eliminating their jobs in a 10-year span, 5-year span, 30-year span is so high that it's not sustainable. So the greater good is protecting your citizens from... Look,
they probably won't do that, though. I feel like a lot of people in the government want people dependent upon the government because the more people you have dependent upon the government, the more power they have. So I don't think they're going to save truckers' jobs. And I've seen some of the issues with gas prices right now. Some truckers have just said, you know what, forget it. It's not even worth it at this point because they're having to spend so much on gas that the amount of money that they make is getting eaten up by the gas that they have to pay for. So it's just become like this pointless journey. Like I'm driving, X number of states away across the country, spending days away from my family for basically nothing anymore. And then you add on top of that, now you have driverless cars. Maybe they're onto something right there. Maybe we should push for, no driverless vehicles. All vehicles have to have a driver. Every single one, especially trucks, big rigs. But like I said, I don't think our government will push for that. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comment section.
Capitalism is the best economic system I can think of, I think that anyone's ever thought of. But that doesn't mean that it's a religion and everything about it is good.
No, but
there's no Nicene Creed of capitalism that I have to buy into. What I care about is living in a country where, decent people can live happy lives, actually. And so, no, I would say immediately, no, are you joking? And I maybe would make up some pretext for public consumption, like, oh, they're dangerous. The technology is not quite finessed. No. But the truth would be, I don't want...
I like how he admitted he would dramatize it a little bit. I like that he admitted that. That's being real. It's better than a lot of folks out here would do. They would just flat out lie about the whole situation. But I respect that. I gotta respect that. The truthfulness. Sheesh. All right. I didn't expect that. Okay. All right.
Want to put 10 million men out of work because you're going to have 10 million dead families, and the cascading effect from that will wreck your country.
So back to the technology question. So it's fascinating to me that you're so willing to restrict technology in this particular area, not because it's not a justifiable policy.
Not willing.
Eager to.
Thrilled
to
do that.
What's the limiting principle? Because obviously jobs are lost in industries through creative destruction and have been for the entire time the free market has existed. Right? I mean, wheelwrights lost their jobs when the automobile was created. What's to prevent this principle that you're speaking of from just becoming Ludditism? That technology is destroying jobs.
Well, I don't think Ludditism is insane. I mean, there were massive costs to the Industrial Revolution.
But you say you're a fan of capitalism and development. We wouldn't have all the cool stuff we have, right? I mean,
look, I'm for capitalism. I'm for machines.
Right.
They all but guarantee I'll live way longer than my great-grandparents. I get it. I'm for machines, okay? I'm just saying that there was a cost. Half the world was enslaved for 70 years under Bolshevism because those countries didn't manage, I would argue, the transition from an agrarian economy into an industrial one. That's what that was, okay? So we're on the cusp of a completely transformative revolution, as or more transformative as the Industrial Revolution, and no one is trying to take control of it at all or figure out how to channel these forces into an outcome that we want to live with realistically. And because they're not, you're going to see reactions, and you're already seeing reactions against this stuff that are flat out extreme. So the model, again, is Teddy Roosevelt, who was a capitalist, a patriot, a man of deep faith. He was not anti-business, and yet he restrained American businesses. He broke them up and was hated for doing it in the service of a higher goal, which was a stable, happy country where the traditions could be preserved. If he didn't do that, there's no telling like what would have happened to the wobbly, the IWW or whatever. We could have gone in a totally different direction.
I mean, so I will admit I'm not a Teddy Roosevelt fan, and I would have opposed the trust busting. But when it comes to the sort of politics we're talking about, I guess my major question is it a contributing factor to societal unrest to tell people that politics is to blame for the problem? Are we edging on political messianism? The idea that if we just change a couple of policies here or there, then we'll be able to fix everything. When the reality is that, as you talk about a little bit in the book, what we may be suffering from is an actual spiritual malaise. And maybe economics has something to do with it. I would argue that it has a lot more to do with a generalized move away from social fabric driven by all of the factors that used to exist in churches and all of these things. And that if we are going to maintain both freedom.
There's a lot of issues with, our society today. Like you said, people moving away from like the values that, kind of religion used to teach everyone. Fatherless homes, which we've seen study after study that have proven that is devastating to the family structure, not having a dad there. The possible loss of jobs to one of the biggest industries, trucking, like we just touched on. I mean, there's other job losses as well. But another question would be, what do you guys think the solution to something like that would be? Because a lot of people, I know people who are truckers. So what do you think the solution to that? Do you just let the trucking industry be taken over by automated vehicles? So all the trucks that you see, hauling down, each highway will have like all these massive cameras. I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of the driverless semi trucks, but they're like outfitted with like all of these fancy big cameras all over the place. I mean, it looks kind of bizarre, but there's just cameras all around the thing. Do you guys think that should just be the new norm, or should we do as Tucker Carlson said earlier and kind of limit that or block that from even happening, because we know the outcome? A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. A lot of people are going to be jobless and have no way to support themselves. I mean, granted, they could find another job, but who's to say that it pays as much? Who's to say that it's a job that they enjoy? You know what I mean? So how does that affect society, taking something that big and that major away? Let me know in the comment section, please.
And stability. The John Adams formulation was that this Constitution was only built for a moral and virtuous people. It wasn't built for any other.
Got it.
There are two ways to actually tackle that. One is to say we are no longer moral and no longer virtuous, so we have to change the freedom. And the other is to say, well, if we want to maintain the freedom, we have to become moral and virtuous again. And I wonder if we as public figures, because we're in the same business more or less, where we ought to be putting our focus. Should we be putting our focus on justifying people's fears about the economy and suggesting that a political messiah is around the corner? Or should we be saying to people, listen, the industry in your town may be dying, and as a temporary stopgap, perhaps we can stop technology from advancing. Perhaps we can stop trade from eating your job. Or should we be saying to people, listen, America was built by folks who crossed mountains to go to the middle of nowhere in pure risk. And you are guaranteed nothing in the United States but the adventure of your life. There are 7 million unfilled jobs. Maybe we need to actually move. Maybe you need to go to North Dakota and get a fracking job.
Yeah, leave your parents' graves in the town you grew up in to move to some soulless city and become a cog in some You think?
Well, I mean, that's the biblical mandate: leave the land that you've known and go to some place for adventure.
I don't know.
I would say there's a balance to it. I feel like there's a balance to life in general. I mean, if you consume too much of something that's good, it could harm you, right? So you have to have a balance. Just because water is good for you doesn't mean that you should consume too much of it. That'll kill you. You could literally drown yourself to death by drinking too much water. I forgot the technical term for it, but you can drown yourself from the inside out, So there's a balance to life, and I feel like it would be the same thing with a situation like this. There's a balance to protecting jobs and having people relocate and get creative and find different ways to make money. So obviously it's a very complicated and complex question. I don't think it could be solved with just one simple answer. But in general, like I said, there's a balance to it. So maybe you slow it down, technology advances. So you'll say, hey, we have this technology. For example, we'll say, semi trucks. Hey, we've got the technology to do it, but we'll hold off for, 30 years. We won't utilize this technology for the next 30 years. So it gives people time to either prepare themselves or retire out of the industry. You know what I mean? So maybe we implement something like that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. Maybe that's a dumb, answer. Talk to me. Be honest. I mean, I've been wrong on a lot of things. This wouldn't be the first. So
it's a mixture of both. And I would say answer your
I don't know.
It's a mixture of both. And I would say answer your initial question. Anyone who argues that any of this is going to be fixed by a person or a bill that makes its way through Congress or new Supreme Court justice is lying to you. That's a grotesque and dishonest oversimplification of the sort that politicians and, by the way, talk show hosts specialize in. And so to the extent I played a role in lying about that, I'm sorry. I never want to be that guy. I always want to acknowledge how complex and multifaceted all of these problems are, because they are. I'm merely making a couple of very obvious observations.
That there are downsides to this
We
stuff.
are not servants of our economic system. We are not here to serve as shareholders. We're human beings, and our concerns are real. Now, they must be balanced against the concerns of shareholders and lots of other concerns. But to say that, if it's more efficient to have you move to some crappy suburb to serve some douchey company because that's what is best to increase value, it's like, it's okay for me to stand up and say, there are other concerns here, actually. And there's a social cost to doing that. Anyway, this all used to be obvious. These things were actually debated during the Industrial Revolution. The Luddites are used for propaganda purposes to make the other side seem ludicrous. You're literally smashing machines. You're a dummy. You're an animal. You know what I mean? But actually, the concern is totally real. If you spend, just like roughly 5,000 years in one kind of economy that changes incrementally over time, but basically living from what you grow, living with your family and working 100 yards away for thousands of years, and then in the space of, 100 years after the steam engine is invented, everything is completely different. That's a lot. It doesn't mean that you should stop it or smash the machines with a hammer, but it means you should be thoughtful in the way you channel these awesome forces, these awesome economic forces. You are not a servant to them. They are tools that thoughtful people use to increase the goodness of their society.
absolutely, they are tools to increase the goodness of society, but you have to be measured in how you implement them into society. Otherwise, you could create a collapse, right? Because if you take all of these automated, systems and trucks and everything, and you just flood the system with them, you leave people with no jobs because all of these computers are doing everything. So what are people left to do? I mean, maybe producing these machines, but there's only so many jobs to do that. So like, what are people left with? And also, I think there's a happiness factor that has to be factored in as well. If everybody's unhappy with the jobs that they are doing, because the only jobs are production jobs, and that's assuming that those production jobs aren't automated by machines and things, which I feel like I've seen, videos of automated big machines that, assemble, equipment. So not only is the equipment automated, but the machines that assemble the equipment is automated. So like, where do regular everyday people, hardworking individuals fall into that equation? I feel like they don't. And that's part of the problem. So now you have a huge number of people who are dependent upon the government, Uncle Sam, to provide for them, which I think is overall a terrible, horrible decision. So how do we solve that? That's the $1 million question. Y'all let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like I said, it's a very complex issue. Obviously, it's multifaceted. There isn't like one true answer to that problem. But like I said, talk to me in the comment section below. Like, share, comment, and of course, hit that subscribe button before you go. Peace and love. I'm out.